Historically, red spruce supported several hundred different animal species. And when I say red spruce, I really mean a red spruce northern hardwood forest that's well-balanced variety of tree species that are dominated by red spruce, but with a lot of variety. So it supported several hundred different species that included rare and endangered species today like the West Virginia northern flying squirrel, game species that are in decline like the snowshoe hare, and a variety of bird species like the saw-whet owl. A lot of those species are really struggling today because what we have left of the red spruce forest is very fragmented and doesn't provide extensive habitat. So it's really critical that we restore an interconnected matrix of spruce forests for those species right now. But going forward, the Central Appalachians are going to be a migration superhighway in the face of climate change. So we can quantitatively say that animal species are moving upslope and they're moving northward. And in the eastern US, that funnels those species onto the crest of the Appalachians and up north towards the boreal regions. Now, not everything's going to go that far, but there's going to be a lot of species flow right in and around this region, right in the high elevations that were historically spruce forest. Those animals, of course, are seeking cooler and wetter habitats, and red spruce forests are the coolest and wettest habitat we have. So red spruce forests, if we can restore them, are going to be a great facilitator for that migratory superhighway. That said, climate change is not going to be good for red spruce. Red spruce is really a boreal species that just holds on in cool, wet areas now. And when things heat up, habitats are going to become less suitable for red spruce. Now, red spruce forests do self-sustain even under warm conditions, and so if we can get spruce forests into the canopy before climate change really has its worst effects, then that spruce forest will self-sustain for a long time. So, prior to the industrial logging era in the late 1800s, early 1900s, red spruce was the dominant canopy conifer in the high elevations of the Central Apps, especially West Virginia. So in West Virginia, red spruce dominated about 500,000 acres and was an important forest tree on about 1 million or 1.5 million acres. After the industrial logging era, red spruce was essentially wiped out except for a handful of pockets here and there that were missed by the big cut. Since then, it's gradually recovered naturally up to about 50,000 acres of healthy red spruce forest remaining, so about 10% of its original range. So studies in the early to mid 1900s suggested that red spruce would take about 1,000 years to recover naturally. We're 100 years in, and it's about 10% of the way there, so we're pretty much on track. So there are three sort of states that the historic red spruce ecosystem, the historic range of red spruce, is in right now. So there's the about 50,000 acres of healthy red spruce forest, and that we just need to basically protect. On the far end of the spectrum, there are denuded landscapes with no spruce, but which historically would have supported a healthy spruce ecosystem. Those are the areas that we would plant spruce in. But in the middle, there are these hardwood-dominated forests with maybe a scattered canopy spruce or a scattered patch of canopy spruce here and there, but that which historically would have supported a lot more spruce. And so in those forests, if you go around and look, you'll find a lot of red spruce seedlings and saplings suppressed in the understory, stuck there due to that deep shade from the hardwoods. And so red spruce is adapted to get established in shaded conditions like that and wait for a disturbance. But in these young managed forests that we have, disturbance doesn't happen the same way it used to in old growth forests, and many of those spruce will age out and die in the understory waiting for a natural release event to happen. So that's where we come in. We augment and accelerate that natural process by coming in and making our own disturbance, essentially. So we go in and with our non-commercial spruce release, we find red spruce saplings and mid-story trees suppressed in hardwood forests, and we go in and we selectively remove competing hardwoods from around them. That's going to open up the understory and the mid-story and the canopy right in that carefully selected area. That's going to let light down onto the spruce, and that's going to let it grow to reach the canopy. So you might think that to create that canopy gap, all you have to do is just go in and kill everything that's creating shade around this spruce. There are a couple of reasons not to do that. Number one, we aren't just restoring spruce, we're restoring the spruce hardwood ecosystem. So hardwoods do play a part in that, and we want to make sure we retain hardwoods that are beneficial right now for wildlife and are going to be beneficial in the long term for that spruce hardwood habitat. So examples of that are these black cherries all around us. Those are great for wildlife, one of our best remaining wildlife species. So we want to retain those whenever we can. American beech is another one. So it's in heavy decline, but whenever we see a healthy one that is producing mast, we want to retain those. And then yellow birch is a pretty typical associate of red spruce, so we want to retain some of that for its long-term habitat benefits. You don't want to just go in and wipe out every single tree that's shading out a spruce, because sometimes you might lose something valuable in the process. So there's a lot of science behind this, but it's also a little bit subjective, and that we have to pick and choose, you know, do we fully release this spruce or do we retain some of these nice hardwoods around it? And we'll get into a little bit more detail later about exactly which hardwoods fit exactly which purpose. Another reason not to just come in and kill everything around the spruce is that even if it's all relatively undesirable species like diseased beech, for example, sometimes you go in and you kill all of that and the spruce still isn't going to get to the canopy because gaps close. And so, you know, a spruce like those ones back there, or even this one right here, that's, you know, 5 feet tall or less, those have no chance of getting to the canopy even if a full gap is created, because the normal gap size that we make in this forest type is going to close in about 15 years. So even under good conditions, we're probably only buying these spruce about 20 years of growth max. And so if we do that and they're still not going to get close to the canopy, there's no real reason to kill canopy trees. It's a lot better to focus on one step at a time. And so, you know, for these ones, we're going to come in, we're going to remove all the mid-story around them. We're still going to give them a nice little boost, but we're not going to kill these nice big canopy cherries, because it wouldn't really serve any constructive purpose. It's a lot better for us to come in, take out the immediately competing understory and midstory, let these spruce grow up into the midstory where they're really poised to get into the canopy, then come in with a second entry in 10 or 20 years, take out some of that canopy and get them all the way up. Contrast that with a spruce that's already won the battle for the understory and the midstory, and it's up strongly in the midstory or even the subcanopy. You know, that's a case where we might not take the understory or midstory because it's not competing. We'll just focus on the canopy because those spruce are really poised to get up there quickly. The general gist is that it's always a trade-off of what would the potential benefit be for this spruce and what would it cost to get that benefit, and given those two things, what do we want to do here? And just to illustrate a little bit more, so this spruce right here, only about 5 feet tall. I counted the branches and it's about 30 years old. You know, you'll see some of these spruce that are just 10 or 12 feet tall, they'll be 60 years old. So again, red spruce is adapted to survive for a pretty long time in the forest understory, staying suppressed under deep shade. But even for a shade-adapted species like spruce, there's only a set time limit for it, and that time limit is about 100 years. On average, after about 100 years of suppression, red spruce will no longer be able to respond to a disturbance event, and it will just decline and die off. So we do have sort of a time limit here. Added on top of that, climate change is not going to be good for red spruce, and climate change is probably coming even sooner than 100 years to these parts. So that's another reason why we want to get this species to the canopy quickly. So if we can get red spruce established in the canopy on, about a 50-year time frame, that's going to be one of the best habitats for resilience to climate change.
Generally when they're like this height, they're a really good candidate for basil spray. You don't want ones that are really tiny. If they're below your knee height, don't worry about them. Just pass them on by. You might give them a little helping hand if it doesn't cost too much time and if there's like nothing else in your track line. But otherwise, I mean, you can look around here. There's a lot of other like great candidates for the spruce release. So gotta look at size. Even ones that are up to like 15 feet or so might have trees such as this maple here, the maple right next to you. Trees that are 6-inch in diameter or smaller can be basil sprayed. So it's looking at those trees that are a little bit bigger in girth and seeing and looking up and seeing what kind of shade that they can cause. So you can get trees that are, twice as high as this and are getting shaded out by something that's, at that 6-inch diameter, and you can go ahead and take that. But generally we're looking at the smaller size class of spruce as you're walking through. So once you can make a determination, like if that's a spruce that you want to release, you look around. So the biggest culprit of our release work, the biggest victim, is going to be all of this beech brush. It really comes off of the diseased trees. We've got one right there, got one behind it. So all of these are basically just going to be suckers off of those. They're already diseased, except you'll notice that a lot of these are already tall or shorter than this guy. This guy is already above them, and you don't have to worry about getting these suckers or any other kind of sapling that's smaller than the tree you're trying to release. Also, if you notice, these guys are really thin, so if you try to go after them, more spray is going to be gotten onto the ground than onto the actual little seedling sapling. So that's also something to take into consideration. And also, if you really wanted to get rid of a sapling, you can merely break it in half. Don't have to waste any herbicide, and what I just did was way quicker even than spraying it. So also look for that if you really want to get rid of one, but it's going to be too thin to spray. You can probably just snap it in half. Once you have your spruce identified, you start basically, I like to look and make kind of like a circle around it. Kind of step back and see what you're working with, and take a visual look at it and start identifying what you're going to need to take. The species that we will generally see out here, it's going to come down to beech, maples, birch, some magnolia, definitely cherries. So it should be, everything's already leafing out, which is great for us. So it should be easy to identify those trees using the leaves. They should be small enough for you to be able to see those leaves. Always make sure you identify what you're taking. You can't identify it, then either call somebody who can, or just don't take it. Never kill something you cannot identify. So cherries, that's not generally a tree that we take, but when they're small saplings, we can take those. If they're really causing, some shade over our spruce, if they're directly over top of it. Once they grow to be, the big timber-sized trees, then we will leave those alone. Maples, take those generously.
Red and sugar?
Red and sugar. They're all over the place. we're only doing a portion of basil spray in this site. So you also have to think about that even if we take all of the maples right here, there are still plenty of maples, like maple saplings, up the hill and beyond. They will get replenished in this area. They have such a wide seed source elsewhere, so we really don't have to worry about it right now. Once we're taking canopy trees, that's something that's a consideration because we are then taking that seed source. So, but that's not to be worried about until later. Definitely. How much do you guys I mean, it's probably not even a whole turn. Yeah, mine's only like, mine's not even a quarter of a turn.
Northern side, so
Yeah, and you'll get the hang of it.
I
I mean, again, he'll get better. He'll get better with time.
you got the other
I
side.
mean, and
Yep,
then,
I got over here for you. And
throw
I already
it
got
on
this
the
guy.
bottom, like,
So what else do you want to take? Yep. So these guys.
So these are still color. They're still creating stages of spruce, and they're really going to speed up.
You see these guys, and I'm just doing a double check to make sure there aren't any strips. All right, what else do you want to take?
Now that with what they're taking, so this tree, then yeah, the sort of a ring paintbrush, and then
Let's see. Probably some of these trees right
Yep.
here.
And
really hard
what are these
to-
trees?
Probably a lot of these
to do it accurately.
Those are
on
beech,
that,
those are
what you
beech,
can
and
do
the
is you
big
can
guy
just
here?
hit really close to the tree and
This one?
squeeze it a
Yeah.
little bit,
Oh, yeah, that's
basically just
the
rip it
ugly
down.
beach, I think.
Disease beech.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's
He's not too big to kill.
He's right on the cusp, I would say.
good news is usually you
Get rid of some of it.
can
Well, it's not very thick. It's also not really coming off as well with my boot, so.
Did you already talk about how to protect your spruce from your spray?
I said that they would need to protect their spruce while they sprayed. I just talked to Joel about how he would do it with this guy over here.
If we disregard the hardwood aspect, we know exactly how to release every single red spruce that's in the understory of the forest. You know, we know which trees we need to take to get to that desired light level. But there are a lot of other considerations going on. You know, these aren't invasive plants we're dealing with. These are native hardwoods, and any native hardwood tree is going to have at least some value. And so we always have to carefully weigh the ecological value of this native hardwood tree versus the ecological value of the spruce that we're releasing. We tend to remove a lot of understory and midstory in the general vicinity of a suppressed red spruce. Once that is done, we can come back through, and for the biggest and best of those spruce that we've released through understory and midstory removal, we can come back in and we can create canopy gaps overhead. Now, to create a canopy gap, you have to kill canopy hardwoods. And so this is where we're really, really selective about which trees that we take out and which trees we leave. It's hard to write a cut and dried prescription for this that's broadly applicable because every site is different. We might have a site that's just all red maple, and so, you know, we might be going through a 9 out of 10 spruce, we'll just be able to take out the red maples around it and that's it. But then we might be going through the site and we come across a yellow birch that's overtopping a red spruce, and in that case, yellow birch is a great wildlife tree. It's not widely present in the site, and so we'll probably want to retain that. Whereas we might have another site where yellow birch is really common and red maple is less common. So we might see the flip side where we're taking a decent bit of yellow birch, but we might want to retain more red maples. And so Again, we know what the spruce needs, but we also know that these hardwoods have a lot of value in and of themselves, and so we just have to make those judgment calls out in the field as to what hardwoods we take and what hardwoods we leave. So, I'm basically just going to talk you all through how I would approach this tree when I first come across it. So, like I said, this spruce is about 18 feet tall. It's in the lower mid-stories. It's a pretty good candidate for a canopy gap. We've gotten rid of all of the competing understory and most of the mid-story vegetation. So, it has a pretty clear shot up to the subcanopy. So, it's pretty easy for us to see what's shading it and what we need to take. So first off, directly over top, we have sugar maple, yellow birch, black cherry. Those are really good wildlife trees. Yellow birch is great for wildlife habitat, for nesting material. Cherry is great for wildlife food. So, is it really worth making a canopy gap, given that I'm probably going to have to take one or both of those trees? Well, looking around, alright, outside of this gap area where there are no spruce, there's no chance of release, I see yellow birch, black cherry, 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 yellow birch. There's a lot of black cherry and a lot of yellow birch here. So, it is fine to take a few to release this spruce, which is, in the long term, the positive benefit of releasing this spruce is going to outweigh the negative benefit of losing a cherry or two and a yellow birch or two. Makes sense so far? Alright, so we're still clear to make this gap, but then remember, just what's directly over top isn't enough. We want to look on the south side for other things we can take. Really, that south quadrant there looks pretty okay, but there is a yellow birch over there, which, the trunks are a pretty long way away. That's probably 25 feet. But you can see it's on the south side. The sun's going to be coming from that way, and it has a bunch of dense foliage that's sticking out this way, sort of into our gap area. So, we're definitely going to want to take that one on the south side. Again, it's a yellow birch. It's a nice tree, but there's plenty more around it. Is there anything else that we want to take to expand this gap out a little bit? Honestly, probably not. The canopy trees are pretty widely spaced right here. And so probably the only extra tree that we need to take would be that one. So 5 total hardwoods for this nice spruce here. That's pretty good trade. Good to make this gap. So, Breezy, how about you follow behind me with the spray bottle and fill my guts? The idea of hack and squirt isn't to make big gashes in the tree. It's to make pockets in the tree that you're going to fill with herbicide. These pockets need to go all the way through the bark, all the way through the cambium, which is the layer that separates the bark from the sapwood, and at least a little bit into the sapwood. The reason for that is the inner bark is going to translocate the herbicide downward into the roots, and the sapwood is going to translocate the herbicide up through the leaves and branches and then back down into the roots. So you're having two-way circulation that really maximizes the extent to which that herbicide is going to get down into the roots and get into the entire root system, which is what we want. So, I'm just going to do this whole tree, and then you all can come take a look. So you're making these pockets all the way around the tree, but they're not connected. You want a couple inches of just intact bark in between each pocket, so that once the herbicide has gone out to the leaves, it has a place to translocate back downward through the trunk and into the roots. All right. That'll do it. So if you all want to come in here and take a look, it's going to be pretty easy to see with this pocket. Gather around. So you can see here I've gone all the way through all the different layers of bark and into the sapwood there. So that's really what you're looking for. Now, if I loop this back up and Breezy put some herbicide in it, and see how much it holds. So with those bottles, you usually want at least 3 full sprays. But really, you want to fill your packs until they are completely full, but not overflowing. You don't want to take anything.
This maple, that maple,
Some of these yellow birches that are
that yellow birch.
All right, we got 4 trees so far: maple, maple, birch, birch. That's a good start.
Oh, my earliest nights they were sleepless.
The hatchet does.
Under my covers I dream. I'm asleep in a tent on Mount Everest. I poke out my head and I freeze. Oh, well, my sister was born on an island. Brother was born in my dream. Well, I see him each night and he's smiling. He told me it's not how it seems. Oh, chicka, 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 chicka. Chicka, chicka. Well, the bones in my body are golden.
So red spruce was important in the past, it's important in the present, and it'll be really important in the future. I would just emphasize that our target ecosystem is not just a pure red spruce monoculture. It's a mixed red spruce northern hardwood forest. And that forest, which is dominated by red spruce but has a lot of northern hardwoods mixed in, that has a ton of wildlife benefits, supports 300 different species just of animals. And in the long term, it's going to have timber benefits as well. You know, you still retain the ability to harvest hardwoods, and in fact, you can harvest them for spruce restoration. And red spruce is a really valuable timber tree if we can just bring it back to the point where timbering would be self-sustaining.